I was sprinting down the sterile white corridors of St. Mary's Hospital when Nurse Patricia grabbed my arm and whispered those words that would change everything. "Hide now. Don't let her see you. Trust me on this." Before I could even process what was happening, she pushed me into the supply closet next to my husband's ICU room, and through the narrow gap in the door, I watched a woman I had never seen before walk confidently into my husband's room like she owned the place. My name is Jennifer Matthews. I'm 34 years old, and just 48 hours ago, I was living what I thought was a perfectly normal life in downtown Chicago. My husband David and I had been married for 7 years. We lived in a comfortable apartment in Lincoln Park, and he worked as a financial consultant for one of those big firms on Michigan Avenue. That Tuesday morning started like any other. David kissed me goodbye, told me he had back-to-back meetings all day, and walked out the door with his briefcase and that charming smile that made me fall in love with him in the first place. I was at my desk at the marketing agency where I work when my phone rang at 2:15 in the afternoon. The voice on the other end was mechanical, professional, terrifying. "Mrs. Matthews, this is Chicago Memorial Hospital. Your husband has been brought to our emergency room. He suffered a severe cardiac event. You need to come immediately." And my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab my purse. My coworker Amanda drove me to the hospital because I was in no condition to drive, my mind racing through every worst-case scenario possible. When I arrived at the hospital, the chaos of the emergency room felt surreal. People crying, doctors shouting orders, machines beeping incessantly. A doctor with tired eyes and graying hair approached me, introducing himself as Dr. Richardson. "Your husband suffered a massive heart attack, Mrs. Matthews. We've stabilized him. But the next 72 hours are critical. He's in the intensive care unit now, and we're monitoring him closely." I felt my legs give out beneath me, and Amanda caught me before I hit the floor. If you're connecting with this story right now, please help this channel grow by clicking that subscribe button. We're working toward reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference in keeping these real stories coming to you. They let me see David for just 10 minutes that first evening. He looked so fragile lying there, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that were literally keeping him alive. His face was pale, almost gray, and seeing him like that broke something inside me. I held his hand and whispered that I loved him, that he needed to fight, that we had so many plans still ahead of us. The nurse on duty that night was kind. She told me to go home and rest, that David was in good hands, and that I should come back in the morning when visiting hours started. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat in our apartment, surrounded by photos of our life together, our wedding day, vacations to California and Florida, random Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. I kept thinking about how fragile life is, how everything can change in a single heartbeat. At 6 a.m, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove back to the hospital, desperate to see my husband, to make sure he was still fighting. That's when everything went sideways. I was walking toward the ICU, my heart pounding in my chest, when Nurse Patricia, a woman I had met briefly the night before, suddenly appeared in front of me with an expression I couldn't quite read. She looked nervous, scared even, and before I could ask what was wrong, she grabbed my arm with surprising strength and pulled me toward that supply closet. "Hide now. Don't let her see you. Trust me on this," she whispered urgently, and something in her voice made me obey without question. From my hiding spot, I could see directly into David's room through the partially open door. A woman walked in, and everything about her screamed confidence and familiarity. She was tall, probably in her early 30s, with long dark hair and designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary. But what made my blood run cold was how comfortable she looked, how she walked straight to David's bedside and took his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Click subscribe right now if you want to hear how this unfolds, because what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind, and we're so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers with your help. I couldn't hear everything they were saying, but I caught fragments of their conversation. The woman was crying, touching David's face with a tenderness that made my stomach turn. Baby, I can't believe this happened, she said, her voice breaking. We were just talking about the trip to Miami, about finally telling everyone about us. My entire body went numb. What was she talking about? Who was this woman? And why did she think she had any right to be in my husband's room? Nurse Patricia was standing next to me in the closet, and I turned to her with tears streaming down my face. Who is that woman? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Patricia looked at me with genuine sympathy. That's Monica Harrison, Mrs. Matthews. She's been coming to visit your husband every day for the past 6 months, always during afternoon visiting hours when you're at work. She signs in as his sister. The world tilted on its axis. Sister? David didn't have a sister. He was an only child. His parents had passed away years ago. How long have you known about this? I asked Patricia, trying to keep my voice steady. She sighed deeply. I suspected something was off about 3 months ago, the way they acted together. It wasn't how siblings behave, but I didn't know how to approach you about it, and honestly, I wasn't sure if my suspicions were correct until yesterday. Yesterday, when David had his heart attack. What happened yesterday? I asked, feeling like I was about to hear something that would destroy me completely. Patricia looked uncomfortable, but she continued. When your husband was brought in, he was conscious for a few minutes before the procedure. He was disoriented, and he kept asking for Monica. He gave the paramedics her number, saying she was his emergency contact, that she needed to know what happened to him. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Emergency contact. Not me. Not his wife of 7 years. Some woman named Monica, who I had never even heard of until this moment. Please hit that subscribe button right now. Your support means everything as we build this community together, and we're counting on you to help us reach that 1,000 subscriber milestone. I watched through the crack in the door as Monica continued to cry over David's unconscious body. I told you the stress from this double life was going to kill you, she said, and I could hear the genuine anguish in her voice. You kept saying you were going to tell her, that you were going to end things, and we could finally be together. But you kept putting it off, and now look what happened. My hands were clenched into fists so tight my nails were digging into my palms. Double life. Those words echoed in my mind like a death sentence. How did you know she was coming today? I asked Patricia, my voice hollow. She called the nurses' station at 5:30 this morning, asking about David's condition. She said she'd be here by 7. I knew you usually came early, so when I saw you walking down the hallway, I had to make a split-second decision. I was grateful for that decision, even though part of me wanted to burst into that room and confront both of them, even though David was unconscious and couldn't defend himself or explain anything. The next 20 minutes felt like an eternity. Monica stayed by David's bedside, talking to him, crying, telling him about how much she loved him, about the life they had planned together. She mentioned an apartment they had been looking at in River North, about how they had talked about starting a family once he sorted everything out with me. Sorted everything out. Like I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle in their perfect love story. Finally, Monica stood up, kissed David's forehead, and left the room. I watched her walk down the hallway, wiping her tears, looking like a tragic figure from some romantic drama, except this wasn't a movie. This was my life falling apart in real time. When she was gone, Patricia opened the closet door fully. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way, she said softly. Do you want me to call security? Hospital administration? We can ban her from visiting if you want. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel because this story takes even more unexpected turns, and your subscription helps us bring more real-life stories like this one to light. Just click that red subscribe button. I shook my head, my mind racing through 1,000 different emotions at once. Anger, betrayal, confusion, heartbreak. I need to think, I told Patricia. I need to figure out what to do." She nodded understandingly. "Take all the time you need. I'll make sure she doesn't come back while you're here. I'll put a note in the system that only you're allowed to visit as his spouse." The word spouse felt meaningless now. What did it mean to be someone's spouse when they had been living an entire secret life? I went into David's room and stood by his bed, looking at the man I thought I knew. The man I had built a life with. He looked so vulnerable lying there, attached to machines, fighting for his life. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to demand answers he couldn't give in his current state. Another part of me, the part that still remembered loving him, just felt devastated that our relationship had come to this. Over the next 24 hours, I did something I never thought I would do. I became a detective in my own marriage. I went home and started going through David's things, his laptop, his phone, his papers. It didn't take long to find the evidence of his double life. There were text messages with Monica going back almost 2 years, not 6 months like Patricia had thought. Hundreds of messages filled with declarations of love, plans for their future, complaints about how difficult it was maintaining the facade of his marriage to me. I found receipts for dinners at expensive restaurants I had never been to, hotel rooms in downtown Chicago when he claimed to be traveling for work, jewelry purchases I had never received. There was an entire credit card I didn't know about, one he had kept secret, used exclusively for his relationship with Monica. The apartment Monica had mentioned, they had already signed a lease. It was set to start next month. He was planning to leave me. He had been planning it for months, maybe longer. If this story is resonating with you, please subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful true stories with the world. The most painful discovery was a document on his laptop, a draft of a letter he had apparently been writing to me, trying to find the right words to explain why he was leaving. "Jennifer, you're a good person, but we've grown apart. I've found someone who understands me in ways I didn't know I needed. I hope someday you can forgive me and find your own happiness." The casual cruelty of those words, the way he had tried to frame his betrayal as some kind of mutual growing apart, made me want to break something. But here's where the story takes another turn. While I was drowning in the evidence of my husband's infidelity, David's condition took a turn for the worse. Dr. Richardson called me at 2 a.m. on the 3rd day. "Mrs. Matthews, you need to come to the hospital immediately. Your husband's heart is failing. We need to make some critical decisions about his treatment, and as his spouse, you're his legal next of kin." Legal next of kin, not Monica, despite all her claims and dreams and plans. Me. I drove to the hospital in a daze, my mind spinning with conflicting emotions. When I arrived, Dr. Richardson laid out the situation. David needed an emergency procedure, something experimental and risky, with about a 60% success rate. If they didn't do it, he would almost certainly die within hours. If they did it and it failed, he would die on the operating table. "We need your consent to proceed," the doctor said, looking at me with those tired, sympathetic eyes. This is where I faced the biggest moral dilemma of my life. This man had betrayed me, lied to me, built an entire secret life behind my back, planned to abandon me for another woman. Part of me wanted to refuse consent, to let nature take its course, to walk away and let him face the consequences of the stress his lies had created. But I'm not that person. Despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal, I couldn't let him die when I had the power to potentially save him. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of this community as we share stories that matter. Click that button and help us grow to 1,000 subscribers together. I signed the consent forms, and they wheeled David into surgery. The procedure took 6 hours, the longest 6 hours of my life. I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by other people facing their own crises, their own life and death moments. Around hour 4, Monica showed up. Someone must have called her. Maybe she had charmed one of the nurses into keeping her updated. When she saw me, her face went pale. "You," she said, her voice filled with venom. "You shouldn't be here. David wouldn't want you here." I stood up, and for the first time in my life, I felt a cold fury that was almost empowering. "I'm his wife," I said quietly, each word deliberate. "I'm his legal spouse. I'm the one who just authorized a procedure to save his life while you're nothing but his dirty little secret." She looked like I had slapped her. "That's not true. He loves me. We're building a life together." I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the text messages I had found, the ones where David complained about how Monica was getting too clingy, too demanding, how he wasn't sure he could leave me because of the financial complications, how he was enjoying having both of us and wasn't in a hurry to change the situation. Her face crumbled as she read his words. "That's not—" "He didn't mean— we had an understanding," she stammered, but the conviction was gone from her voice. "He was playing both of us," I told her, and saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "He was keeping me as his stable, respectable wife while having his exciting affair with you, and he was never going to choose, because this arrangement worked perfectly for him." Monica sank into a chair, tears streaming down her face. "But he said, he promised." I felt a strange moment of sympathy for her, despite everything. "He promised me things too," I said. 7 years of promises. Press subscribe right now if you're invested in finding out what happens next. We're building something special here, and we need your support to reach 1,000 subscribers. Dr. Richardson came out 2 hours later, still in his surgical scrubs, looking exhausted. "The procedure was successful. He's stable. He's going to need significant recovery time, but he's going to live." I felt relief and resentment in equal measure. Monica jumped up. "Can I see him?" The doctor looked confused, glancing between us. "Only immediate family. Are you related to the patient?" I stepped forward. "She's not family. I'm his wife, and I'm the only one authorized to visit him." Monica's face contorted with rage and grief. "This isn't over," she hissed at me. "When he wakes up, he'll tell you the truth. He'll choose me." I looked at her with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. "Maybe he will," I said. "But that's a conversation he and I will have without you. You need to leave now, or I'll have security escort you out." She left, but not before shooting me a look of pure hatred. Over the next week, David slowly regained consciousness. The doctors said his recovery was progressing better than expected, that he had been incredibly lucky. I visited him every day, but I didn't bring up Monica or anything I had discovered. I just sat there, watching him sleep, wondering who this person really was. The man I had thought I knew had turned out to be a complete stranger. When he was finally coherent enough to have a real conversation, about 10 days after his heart attack, I pulled a chair close to his bed. "We need to talk," I said, and something in my voice must have warned him because his face went pale. "Jennifer, there's something I need to tell you." I held up my hand. "I know about Monica. I know about everything. The apartment, the credit card, the plans to leave. I know it all. Your subscription really helps this channel grow, so please click subscribe and join us on the journey to 1,000 subscribers. Every single one counts." The look on his face was almost comical, a mixture of shock, fear, and something that might have been relief. When did you, he stammered. I told him about that morning, about Nurse Patricia, about watching Monica in his room. I told him about going through his things, finding all the evidence of his double life. His face crumbled. "I'm so sorry, Jennifer. I never meant for this to happen. It got complicated." "Complicated," I repeated, and I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. "You built an entire secret life. You planned to abandon our marriage, but it was just complicated?" He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "I do love you," he said weakly. "I love you both. I couldn't choose. I didn't want to hurt anyone. The audacity of that statement almost made me laugh. You didn't want to hurt anyone, so you decided to lie to both of us, to betray both of us. How was that supposed to work out? He didn't have an answer to that. We sat in silence for a long moment before I spoke again. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to recover from this heart attack. You're going to get better. And then you're going to move into that apartment you leased with Monica. Because our marriage is over. He looked stricken. Jennifer, please. We can work through this. I made a mistake, but we have 7 years together. I shook my head. 7 years of lies, apparently. I deserve better than this. I deserve someone who chooses me without hesitation, without maintaining a backup plan. The divorce process started while David was still in the hospital. My lawyer was a fierce woman named Rebecca Chen who had seen every kind of marital betrayal imaginable. We're going to make sure you get what you're entitled to, she told me. Infidelity matters in Illinois, especially when there's this level of financial deception involved. The credit card David had hidden, the money he had spent on Monica, all of it became evidence in our case. Make sure to subscribe as we get closer to the resolution of this incredible story. Your support by clicking subscribe helps us reach 1,000 subscribers and continue sharing these powerful narratives. Monica tried to contact me several times during this period. First with angry messages calling me spiteful and vindictive for stealing her happiness. Then with pleading messages asking me to let David go so they could be together. Finally, with bitter messages telling me I had won, but that their love was real and would survive this. I blocked her number. Whatever happened between her and David now was none of my business. What I found most interesting was how quickly David's attitude changed once he realized I was serious about the divorce. Suddenly he wanted to fight for our marriage. Suddenly he realized what he was losing. Suddenly Monica wasn't the love of his life anymore. His lawyer tried to argue that the stress of the divorce was impeding his recovery, that we should wait. Rebecca shut that down immediately. Your client should have thought about stress management before maintaining a 2-year affair and multiple financial deceptions. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. In that time, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I started therapy with a wonderful counselor named Dr. Patricia Morrison, who helped me process the betrayal and recognize the red flags I had missed. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. I threw myself into my work and got promoted to senior account manager. I moved to a smaller apartment in Wicker Park that was entirely mine, decorated the way I wanted, filled with things that made me happy. I also learned more about what had actually happened with David and Monica. Through the legal discovery process, I found out that Monica hadn't known David was married until about 6 months into their relationship. When she found out, he had convinced her that our marriage was already over, that we were just waiting for the right time to separate, that he was staying for financial reasons. She had believed him, had waited for him, and had gradually been manipulated into accepting a situation she never would have chosen initially. Please subscribe to this channel right now. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes these stories possible. Just click that subscribe button. In a strange twist, Monica actually reached out to me during the divorce proceedings, asking if we could meet. Against my better judgment and Rebecca's advice, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop in the Loop, 2 women who had both been deceived by the same man. She looked different than I remembered from that morning at the hospital, smaller somehow, less confident. I need you to know that I didn't know about you at first, she said, her voice quiet. And when I found out, he made it sound like you were basically roommates, that the marriage was dead. I believed her, not because I wanted to be friends with her or forgive her, but because I recognized the same manipulation patterns that David had used on me in different ways throughout our marriage. He's very good at telling people what they want to hear, I said. He's very good at making himself the victim in every situation. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. For my part in this, I should have insisted he divorce you before we got so involved. I should have questioned more. We talked for almost 2 hours, comparing notes, finding the inconsistencies in his stories to each of us, realizing how extensively he had lied to both of us. By the end of that conversation, I didn't hate Monica anymore. I pitied both of us for the time we had wasted on a man who wasn't capable of real honesty or commitment. "What are you going to do?" I asked her as we were leaving. She smiled sadly. "I already broke it off with him. Turns out when I asked him to choose me now that you're divorcing him, he suddenly had a lot of doubts. Funny how that works." The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday afternoon in October, 14 months after David's heart attack that had exposed everything. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. Rebecca shook my hand. "You did good. You got a fair settlement. And more importantly, you got your freedom." I had indeed gotten a favorable settlement, including half of everything we had built together, and compensation for the money David had secretly spent on Monica. Don't forget to subscribe and help us reach that 1,000 subscriber goal. Your support means we can keep bringing you these powerful, real stories of resilience and strength. David tried to contact me a few times after the divorce, leaving voicemails saying he had made the biggest mistake of his life, that he wanted another chance, that he had learned his lesson. I never responded. Some mistakes are too big to come back from, some betrayals too deep to forgive. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he eventually moved to Boston for a job opportunity, starting over somewhere new, running away from the mess he had created in Chicago. As for me, I'm still in Chicago, still working at the same marketing agency, still living in my apartment in Wicker Park. I've been on a few dates, nothing serious yet, but I'm not in a hurry. I'm learning to be happy on my own, learning what I actually want in a relationship, learning to recognize the warning signs I missed before. I'm in no rush to get into another serious relationship until I'm absolutely sure I know who I am and what I won't compromise on again. Looking back now, almost 2 years after that morning when Nurse Patricia pulled me into that supply closet, I can say with certainty that finding out about David's betrayal in that way was a gift, as painful as it was. If he had just left me for Monica without me discovering the extent of his lies, I might have spent years blaming myself, wondering what I had done wrong, trying to fix something that was never broken in me but in him. Instead, I got to see the truth clearly. I got to make informed decisions about my future, and I got to rebuild my life on my own terms. I actually saw Nurse Patricia a few months ago when I went to visit a friend who had a baby at the same hospital. She recognized me immediately and gave me a huge hug. "How are you doing?" she asked with genuine concern. "I'm doing really well," I told her honestly. "Thank you for what you did that morning, for protecting me, for giving me the chance to see the truth with my own eyes," she smiled. "Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we need most. I'm glad you're okay." Subscribe right now to support this channel's mission of sharing authentic stories of strength and survival. We're counting on you to help us reach 1,000 subscribers by clicking that subscribe button. The experience changed me in fundamental ways. I'm more cautious now, more aware of red flags, more willing to trust my intuition when something feels off. But I'm also stronger, more confident, more certain of my own worth. I don't need someone else to complete me or validate me. I learned that the hard way, through betrayal and heartbreak. But the lesson stuck in a way it might not have if I had learned it more gently. I occasionally wonder about Monica, whether she found someone who treats her better, whether she learned her lessons from that experience too. I don't wish her harm, despite everything that happened. We were both victims of the same man's inability to be honest or choose. The real villain in this story wasn't her. It was David and his cowardice, his selfishness, his willingness to hurt multiple people rather than make difficult choices and have hard conversations. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that secrets always come out eventually. David thought he could maintain his double life indefinitely, compartmentalizing his relationships, telling each of us what we wanted to hear. But secrets have weight. They create stress, and in his case, that stress literally almost killed him. His heart attack wasn't just a medical event. It was his body rebelling against the unsustainable life he was living, the constant lies and deception taking a physical toll. I'm grateful for my friends who supported me through the worst of it, who let me cry and rage and process everything I was feeling. I'm grateful for my therapist who helped me see patterns I needed to break and strengths I didn't know I had. I'm grateful for Rebecca, my fierce attorney who fought for what I deserved. And yes, I'm even grateful for Nurse Patricia, a stranger who made a split-second decision to protect me from walking into an even more painful situation. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel because these stories of real human resilience need to be heard, and we need your help to reach 1,000 subscribers. Just click that red subscribe button below. These days, my life looks different than I imagined it would when I married David 7 years ago. I'm single, living alone, focused on my career and my friendships, and figuring out who I am outside of a relationship. But it's a good life, an honest life, a life built on truth rather than lies. I wake up every morning knowing that no one is deceiving me, that the person I see in the mirror is real and authentic, not performing a role in someone else's elaborate fiction. I've learned that love without honesty is just manipulation. I've learned that you can't build a real relationship on secrets and compartmentalization. I've learned that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you, the most painful betrayal, can also be the catalyst for becoming the strongest version of yourself. David's heart attack didn't just expose his lies, it exposed an opportunity for me to choose myself, to demand better, to rebuild on my own terms. The anniversary of that morning passes every year now, and each time I mark it quietly, privately, as the day my real life began. The day I stopped living in someone else's carefully constructed illusion and started living in reality. It wasn't easy. The months after discovery were some of the darkest of my life. But on the other side of that darkness was clarity, strength, self-knowledge, and the absolute certainty that I deserve better than what I settled for in that marriage. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the 7 years I spent with David, if I feel like I wasted my 20s and early 30s on someone who didn't deserve my time. The answer is complicated. Do I wish I hadn't been betrayed? Of course. Do I wish I had married someone honest and committed? Absolutely. But those 7 years taught me things I needed to learn. They shaped me into the person I am now, and I refuse to think of that time as purely wasted, even if it ended in betrayal. Please subscribe to help us continue sharing these powerful stories. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription matters in helping us build this community. I'm dating someone new now. Nothing too serious yet, but he's different from David in fundamental ways. He's direct, honest. His life is an open book. When I told him about what happened with my ex-husband, he listened without judgment, and then said something that struck me. The fact that you're willing to trust again after that says more about your strength than his weakness. Maybe he's right. Maybe choosing to remain open to love after betrayal is its own kind of courage. The last time I heard anything about David was about 6 months ago. A former colleague mentioned running into him at a conference in Boston. Apparently he's engaged again, to someone new, someone who presumably doesn't know the full story of what happened in Chicago. I felt a momentary pang of sympathy for his new fiancée, whoever she is. But mostly I felt nothing. He's not my problem anymore. Not my responsibility to warn or protect anyone from him. I did my healing. I moved on. And what he does with his life now is none of my concern. What matters is that I'm happy. Genuinely, authentically happy in a way I don't think I ever was during my marriage, even before I knew about Monica. I was living in a comfortable delusion, a carefully maintained facade, and somewhere deep down, I think I always sensed something was off. Those instincts I ignored, those little inconsistencies I explained away. My gut knew even when my mind refused to accept it. Now I listen to my gut. I trust my instincts, and I refuse to explain away red flags just because the truth might be uncomfortable. If you've made it this far in the story, thank you for listening, and please show your support by subscribing to help us reach that 1,000 subscriber milestone. Your subscription truly makes a difference. The silver lining in all of this, if there is one, is that I found strength I didn't know I had. I survived something I thought would destroy me, and I came out the other side not just intact, but improved. I'm more authentically myself now than I ever was in my marriage. I don't compromise my values or ignore my intuition anymore. I don't settle for crumbs when I deserve the whole meal, and I certainly don't accept lies when I deserve truth. To anyone going through something similar, anyone who has discovered betrayal or is rebuilding after a relationship built on deception, know that it gets better. Not immediately, not without pain and work and dark nights of doubt, but it does get better. You will survive this. You will be stronger for it. And eventually you'll look back and see that the worst thing that happened to you was also the beginning of your best life. That's not toxic positivity or empty reassurance. That's the truth I lived. So here I am, 2 years later, sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and writing this all down, trying to make sense of the journey from that terrible morning in the hospital to this peaceful moment right now. The path between those 2 points was messy and painful and full of learning, but I wouldn't change it even if I could, because this version of me, the one who survived betrayal and came out stronger, is someone I'm actually proud to be. That morning when Nurse Patricia pulled me into that closet and I watched Monica in my husband's hospital room, I thought my life was ending. In a way, it was. The life I thought I had, the marriage I believed in, the future I had imagined, all of that died in that moment. But what I didn't realize then was that something new was being born. A version of myself that was more honest, more resilient, more whole. Sometimes we have to lose everything we thought we wanted to discover what we actually need. Subscribe now to be part of this journey with us. To hear more stories of real people overcoming real challenges, we need just a bit more support to reach 1,000 subscribers, and we're counting on you. The final chapter of this story is still being written, because life doesn't have neat endings or perfect resolutions. I'm still figuring things out, still growing, still learning who I am and what I want. But I'm doing it with my eyes open, with honesty as my foundation, and with the certainty that whatever comes next, I can handle it. Because if I could handle discovering my husband's double life, if I could handle watching my marriage dissolve, if I could handle rebuilding from nothing, then I can handle anything life throws at me. To David, wherever he is now, I hope he learned something from what happened. I hope his heart attack scared him enough to live more honestly, to treat his new partner better than he treated Monica and me. But honestly, I don't think about him much anymore. He's a chapter in my past, not a presence in my present or future. The best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. It's indifference. It's building a life so good that your betrayer becomes irrelevant to it. And to Monica, I hope she found what she was looking for. I hope she learned to recognize manipulation and demand better for herself. I hope she understands now that being someone's secret is never love, no matter what pretty words they use to dress it up. We were both fooled by the same man, both hurt by his inability to be honest, and I hope we both use that pain as fuel to build better lives for ourselves. As I finish telling this story, I'm aware of how much has changed and how much I've grown. The woman who ran to that hospital 2 years ago, desperate to see her husband, believing in her marriage despite warning signs she had ignored, that woman doesn't exist anymore. She was transformed by pain into someone harder in some ways, softer in others, but always, always more real. And that transformation, as agonizing as it was, might be the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for listening to my story, for following along on this journey from betrayal to healing. If it resonated with you, if it helped you in any way, please subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and continue sharing these powerful stories of human resilience and strength. "You spiteful, vindictive," he started, but I hung up. I watched him from my car for another 10 minutes. He made more calls, probably to lawyers, probably to our children. Amber had retreated to the Mercedes, sitting in the passenger seat with her arms crossed. Richard paced the property line, occasionally stopping to stare at the empty lot as if the house might somehow rematerialize if he looked hard enough. Finally, he got back in the car. But before they drove away, he looked directly at where I was parked. Our eyes met across the distance, and in that moment, I saw something I had never seen in Richard before. Genuine fear. Not anger, not indignation, but fear. Fear that maybe, just maybe, he had miscalculated. Fear that the woman he had dismissed as old and useless had just outmaneuvered him completely. I raised my coffee cup in a small salute and smiled. They drove away, and I sat there for a while longer, looking at the empty lot. The grass seed would take a few weeks to fully establish, but already the land looked peaceful, clean, ready for whatever came next, which was entirely my decision to make. My phone buzzed with messages. Emily. Mom, Dad called. He's devastated. What happened to the house? Please call me. David, my son. Mom, this is crazy. Did you really tear down the whole house? Dad is losing his mind. We need to talk. And several from Richard, escalating from demands to threats to, finally, a single question. Why? I texted back to Emily and David. Your father told me to leave and take nothing but my clothes because he deserved a new life with someone young. The house was mine. It was never his to give away. We'll talk soon. I love you both. To Richard, I sent a single sentence. You said you hated old things. Problem solved. The legal aftermath took months to sort through. Richard tried to sue me for destruction of marital property, but David Rothman shut that down with documentation that proved the house and land had always been mine, protected by my grandmother's trust, and never commingled with marital assets. Richard's lawyers argued that the furnishings, the improvements, the fixtures he had paid for over the years entitled him to compensation, and technically they were right. David negotiated a settlement where I paid Richard $800,000 for his legitimate claims to items purchased with marital funds. It was worth every penny to watch Richard's face when he realized that his share of the marital property from an $8 million mansion amounted to less than 10% of the home's value, and that was only because I chose to settle, rather than fight over every receipt and purchase order from 32 years of marriage. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Richard kept his business, his cars, his retirement accounts. I kept the land, my consulting business, my investments, and most importantly, my self-respect. The property settlement was straightforward, since we had essentially already divided everything through the house situation. Richard demanded the land be sold and the proceeds split, but again, my lawyer reminded his lawyer that the land was separate property, never subject to marital division. Richard got nothing from it. Emily and David struggled with what I had done. Emily came to visit me at my new apartment a month after the demolition, and we sat on my small balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, drinking tea, and not quite looking at each other. Mom, I don't understand, she said finally. I get that you were hurt. I get that Dad was cruel. But destroying the house, our house, the place where David and I grew up, all our memories. I set down my tea and looked at my daughter, this beautiful woman I had raised, who was struggling to understand. Emily, those memories are still yours. They're in here. I tapped my head. And here. I touched my heart. The house was just wood and brick and marble. Your father spent years telling me I was too old, too set in my ways, not exciting enough. And then he left me for someone younger and told me to get out of the house I bought, the house I maintained, the house I turned into a home while he focused on his career. He didn't just leave me, sweetheart. He tried to erase me. The house was the last thing he thought he could control, could enjoy while I was supposed to disappear quietly. I couldn't let him have that. Before you find out how this all ends, make sure you're subscribed. I'm so close to 1,000 subscribers. and your click makes a real difference. Hit that subscribe button right now." Emily was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "He told Amber you were crazy, that you'd had some kind of breakdown. She actually feels sorry for you." I laughed at that, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep and genuine. "I'm sure she does. Give her a few years, Emily. When she's 35 and Richard is pushing 60, when she's not quite as young or exciting as she used to be, when there's a 22-year-old secretary looking at him with admiring eyes, she'll understand exactly why I tore down that house." My relationship with my children slowly healed. David took longer than Emily to come around. But eventually, they both understood that what I did wasn't about hurting them or destroying their memories. It was about refusing to be discarded like trash by someone who had promised to love me forever. Richard and Amber's marriage lasted exactly 18 months. I heard through mutual friends that he had started seeing someone else, someone younger than Amber, someone who made him feel alive. Amber filed for divorce, citing infidelity and emotional abuse. She got a decent settlement, but nothing like what she had expected when she married a supposedly wealthy real estate developer. Turns out that without the impressive mansion to showcase, Richard's business suffered. Clients like to be wined and dined in beautiful homes, like to imagine themselves as part of that lifestyle. An empty lot in Winnetka didn't have quite the same appeal. As for the land, I held on to it for 2 years. I paid the property taxes, kept it maintained, and occasionally drove by to look at what had become a small urban meadow, complete with wildflowers that had seeded themselves. It was beautiful in its own way, this empty space that represented possibility rather than pain. Eventually, I sold it to a young couple with 3 children who wanted to build their dream home. They were in their 30s, full of plans and hope, and they reminded me of who Richard and I had been when we first bought that land. I sold it to them for a fair price, much less than its market value, and I made them promise me one thing: that they would build a home filled with respect and love, where neither partner was ever made to feel disposable. I used the money from the sale to expand my consulting business, and to create a foundation that helps women going through divorce, particularly women over 50 who are being pushed out of their marriages for younger partners. The Margaret Chen Foundation provides legal support, financial counseling, and emotional resources. In the first year alone, we helped 63 women navigate divorces where they were being undervalued, dismissed, or financially manipulated. Several of them have become close friends. My apartment downtown became my sanctuary. It's smaller than the mansion, much smaller, but every item in it is mine, chosen by me, meaningful to me. I date occasionally, though I'm not looking to remarry. I've discovered I quite like living alone, making decisions based solely on what I want, not what impresses others or maintains an image. Emily and David are both thriving. Emily's marriage is strong, and she tells me she learned from watching both what to do and what not to do. David got engaged last year to a wonderful woman named Sarah, who is his age, his equal in every way, and who he looks at with genuine respect. When he introduced us, he pulled me aside and said, "Mom, I get it now. I get why you did what you did, and I'm sorry it took me so long to understand." Richard remarried for the 3rd time last year. Wife number 3 is 29. I heard through the social circle we used to share that he's having financial difficulties, and that his new wife is already looking uncomfortable in photos, that same strained smile Amber used to wear. Some men never learn. As for me, at 57, I'm happier than I've been in decades. I wake up each morning in my sun-filled apartment, make coffee the way I like it, and plan my day without considering anyone else's needs or expectations. I work with women who are rebuilding their lives after being told they were too old, too difficult, too much. I watch my children build healthy relationships. I read books, travel when I want, and I never ever apologize for taking up space. The empty lot where my mansion once stood is no longer empty. The young couple built a beautiful home there, modern and warm, and I drive by sometimes to see the lights in the windows, to hear children playing in the yard. It makes me happy to know that the land is being used by people who appreciate it, who see it as a beginning rather than an ending. People ask me if I regret demolishing an $8 million house. The answer is no, not even a little bit. That house had become a monument to everything wrong with my marriage. Beautiful on the outside, hollow on the inside, built on a foundation I provided but that Richard took credit for. Tearing it down wasn't destruction. It was liberation. The final irony came a year ago when Richard called me, not to apologize, not to seek reconciliation, but to ask for money. His business was failing, his new wife was expensive, and he needed a loan. A substantial loan. When I asked why he thought I would help him, he said, "Because we were married for 32 years. Because we have children together. Because you owe me." I laughed. Not a polite laugh, not a careful laugh, but a genuine, from-the-belly laugh that felt wonderful. "Richard, I don't owe you anything. In fact, you still owe me the 32 years I spent supporting your dreams while you took credit for our shared success. But don't worry, I consider that debt paid in full. The look on your face when you saw that empty lot, that was worth 32 years of thankless partnership." He hung up on me. I haven't heard from him since. If you've made it this far in the story, thank you for listening. Please take 1 second to subscribe to this channel. Help me reach that 1,000 subscriber goal. Click subscribe right now and join this community of people who believe in standing up for themselves, no matter what the cost. The truth is, demolishing that house was the most expensive decision I've ever made and the best investment I've ever returned. I didn't just tear down wood and brick and marble. I tore down the idea that I was disposable, that youth trumped experience, that I should quietly disappear to make room for someone newer and shinier. I tore down the lie that my value was tied to my age or my willingness to be convenient for someone else. Richard wanted me gone. Wanted me to take my old, useless self somewhere small and insignificant while he enjoyed the fruits of our combined labor with someone younger. Instead, I took everything he thought was his and reduced it to rubble. I proved that underestimating me was the biggest mistake he had ever made. And I built a new life from the ground up, one where I call the shots, where I define my worth, where I decide what stays and what gets demolished. Some people call me vindictive. Some call me crazy. Some call me a hero. I call myself free. The house is gone, but I'm still here, stronger and happier than ever. And that, more than anything else, is what Richard can't stand. He wanted me to disappear, to fade into the background of his new life. Instead, I disappeared his assumptions, his arrogance, and his ability to take me for granted. Looking back, I realized that text message Richard sent me, the one telling me I was old and useless, was a gift. It was the truth I needed to hear to finally see clearly. He had been showing me who he was for years, someone who valued appearances over substance, youth over wisdom, novelty over loyalty. I had just been too invested in the life we built to acknowledge it. But once he said it out loud, once he made his contempt explicit, I couldn't unsee it. And I couldn't stay in a relationship where I was valued less than the marble floors I walked on. So yes, I tore down an $8 million mansion. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. Because some things are worth more than money. Self-respect, for instance. Dignity. The knowledge that you won't be discarded without consequence. These things, I've learned, are priceless. The empty lot is filled now with someone else's dreams, someone else's family, someone else's hope for the future. And I've built something even better. A life that's entirely mine, on my terms, with no apologies. Richard thought he could upgrade to a newer model and keep all the assets. He learned the hard way that I wasn't just part of the package. I was the foundation the entire package was built on. And when I left, I took the foundation with me. These days, when people ask me about my ex-husband, I smile and say we had a misunderstanding about property ownership. That usually ends the conversation, which is fine with me. The full story, this story, is mine to tell on my own terms. To people who understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away and take everything with you. One last thing before I finish. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in standing up for yourself no matter the cost, hit that subscribe button one more time. Let's build this community together and reach that 1,000 subscriber goal. Your click matters, your support matters, and I can't wait to share more stories with you. In the end, Richard was right about one thing. He did deserve a new life. He just didn't realize he would be starting it without the house, without me, and without the safety net he had taken for granted for 32 years. And me? I got exactly what I deserved too. Freedom, peace, and the satisfaction of knowing that the man who called me old and useless learned that this old, useless woman could take away everything he valued with a phone call and a demolition permit. The house is gone, the marriage is gone. But I'm still here, living my best life, in a beautiful apartment I chose, building a business I'm proud of, helping other women find their strength, and watching my children create healthy, respectful partnerships. I wake up every morning grateful for that text message that changed my life. Grateful for the clarity it provided. Grateful for the rage that fueled me to action. Some people build houses. Some people build fortunes. I built myself a life where no one can ever again make me feel disposable. And that, my friends, is worth more than all the mansions in the world.